What is going on, everybody? Welcome to the Locked In Sports Podcast. I'm William Locke, and joining me today for our 2025 Detroit Tigers season preview is Mr. Andrew Ruppert. Grew up in Detroit, lifelong Tigers fan. Andrew, how you doing?
Doing well, Will. Thanks for having me on. Really been a fan of the podcast since you guys have started it. Been following along. You and Luis have done a great job previewing the season so far, and looking forward to joining as well and getting started talking about this Detroit Tigers team. They really got the baseball crowd going last year, and we're excited about what we got forward for 2025.
Yeah, welcome, Andrew. Again, it's Luis here. We're in the Detroit 2025 Detroit Tigers season. I know there's a lot of optimism after last year's performance with Tarik Skubal winning the Cy Young. I know, Andrew, lifelong Tigers fan?
Definitely lifelong Tigers fan. Yeah, my dad grew up in Wisconsin, so I've been following the Brewers a little bit along. But first memories of going to games was at Comerica Park. Huge Tigers fan. Curtis Granderson, definitely my favorite player growing up. But Miguel Cabrera, watching him growing up, that's how you fall in love with baseball and professional baseball specifically. Because watching a guy at that level for so long, that 2 seasons that he had in 2013, 2014, where he won the Triple Crown and then followed it up with a better season. Didn't win it the second season, but those 2 seasons was unbelievable. And ever since then, just really a big fan of baseball and specifically following the Tigers around.
Yeah, we've talked about on this podcast about Miguel Cabrera. Obviously, he's an all-time great Hall of Famer. I feel like he's still kind of underrated in terms of the crop of the 2000 greats. It seems like Albert Pujols overshadows him a bit, which fair enough. Pujols is great, but Miggy's resume is up there with the best of them.
Yeah, beat him in a World Series. The fact that we didn't win it eventually, I think, is the reason why you don't get that, the allure of looking back on those teams. But great memories nonetheless. And the new Tigers, after a really rough decade or so, is really exciting this year. And like I said, looking forward to what they got in store after really, the run that they had coming out of 2024 and into the playoffs was very unexpected. And then the playoff success that they had is also very encouraging.
Yeah, and the fact, you beat the allegations. If anybody thinks, we have a token Tigers fan, we have a legit Tigers fan on the podcast. This is a guy who knows his stuff. I mean,
Andrew, you were in attendance 2012 World Series, and then last year ALDS Game 4. You were there, right?
Yeah, some notable games. Game 4, that was a tough one. That was one of the beginning of our 2 losses that knocked us out. But Justin Verlander's first no-hitter.
You saw a no-hitter in person?
I did. I had a full leg cast on my left leg up to my hip, and I was jumping up around in that stadium like crazy, man. It was unbelievable. My dad, like I said, it was against the Brewers, so we were definitely not missing that one. Mm-hmm. And unbelievable game. Magglio Ordonez sliding catch. And then you mentioned the World Series game against the Giants. I watched the Giants run out of the dugout on a sweep on us. So.
I'm glad I got to avoid that last year going to the World Series game 4 with the Yankees. I'm sorry you had to experience that.
Oh, no, don't apologize for anything. It was an unbelievable experience. I mean, you're walking around Detroit and there's Japanese reporters out there reporting on the game. How many times are you going to get to see that?
Yeah.
Hey, it's glad to have you. I think it's time we dive into the 2025 team.
Sure.
And let's go through who they got. So the biggest free agent acquisition for the Tigers this year, aside from Jack Flaherty, the reunion, is Mr. Gleyber Torres, who's going to be at second. Riley Green's going to be at left field. Wenzel Perez at center. DHing is Kerry Carpenter. Colt Keefe at first. Jace Jung at third. Jake Riders catching the ball. Zach McKinstry at right. And Trey Sweeney shortstop. Of course, Javi Baez is still on the roster of note. And then the rotation is headlined by Cy Young winner Tarik Skubal, Jack Flaherty, Reese Olson, Casey Mize, and Kenta Maeda. In the pen, they signed Tommy Camley from the Yankees. They got Andrew Chafin back on a minor league deal, but he is a non-roster invitee. and Jason Foley is currently listed as their closer right now. So, Andrew, let's talk. What do you think about this team upcoming this year? I know me and William, they were kind of our sleeper team last year. We're both really optimistic on what they can do, and we were proven right that they made the playoffs. What is your viewpoint on the team this year?
Yeah, there's no need to continue to talk about the end of 2024. That doesn't help you. Everybody starts with 0 wins in 2025. But I think there's a lot of optimism with the lineup specifically going forward. I think there's a lot of experience to build off of, especially with Colt Keith and Riley Green coming off Riley Green's first All-Star season. That's definitely kind of the guy that you want to, hit your coach tails onto and have him anchor the lineup along with Kerry Carpenter. I think there are some lineup deficiencies against specific pitching, but I think overall I'm encouraged about the additions that they made, sprinkling in some pitching in there. I don't love that they didn't land that big right-handed bat of the offseason. Bregman was a huge disappointment not getting that. At this point in his career, he's got that autonomy to really decide wherever he wants to go, and he wanted to go to Boston. I hope he does well there. Fantastic. They really were also targeting Anthony Santander. That was kind of their second option that they didn't really pursue as much because they were so invested into Bregman. I'm not disappointed with the overall outlook of the offseason. I just think that's one area to kind of keep in mind as you're going forward and watching this team of being like, man, they could really use that extra bat in this lineup. But AJ Hinch has done a really nice job, I think, proving that he has that lineup flexibility, and that's going to be the key thing with the offense. With the pitching, obviously, Tarik Skubal is the horse. Like, watching this guy over the last couple of seasons in the major league level, and before that, developing from a 9th-round pick into a no doubt unanimous Cy Young. Pretty unbelievable. I mean, this last season that we watched, not only the dominance and the presence that he has on the mound with the fastball, but also just the pitching ability that he's been able to develop. I think Chris Fetter, pitching coach, has been a massive plus to this team over the years and getting us out of this rebuild. And he's done an amazing job, I think, being the ace of this staff. And then you mentioned bringing back Jack Flaherty. I think that's huge. And when you look back on this trade in a couple of years from now, Tyron Lorenzo, switch hitting catcher, like this guy, watching him in spring training a couple of games, this is an important piece. And bringing back Jack Flaherty in the now is going to help us. There's some injury concerns. I think he could miss some time throughout the season. That's pretty much the reason why the trade with the Yankees didn't go through. And Reese Olson as your third guy. There's some questions in the back end of this pitching staff. I think, there's a lot of flexibility with Jackson Jobe and a couple of other younger guys. At the end of the opening day roster, the AAA is going to have a decent pitching staff, I think, to start the season. But there's just not a lot of real talent outside of Skubal, Flaherty, and Olson. I think there's a lot of question marks. Bullpen wise, I'm intrigued going forward. So overall, I think that we can contend for the AL Central, but there's going to be a little bit of a race there, and it's not a lot of competition there when you talk about the other divisions in baseball. So I think the Tigers are in a good spot this year.
Yeah, I mean, you hit a lot of great points there. We can start with the lineup. I like the addition of Gleyber Torres, just getting him out of New York. I think that the vibes were off there between him and Brian Cashman. It's clear the two maybe didn't get along, especially toward the end of his tenure. I don't think he was beloved in New York. I think he's a good addition. Now, Detroit is one of the harder places to hit as a righty. So I don't know if it's the exact place for him to bounce back.
Mm-hmm.
Apparently it's 23rd in park factor for righties. Comerica Park is. I mean, it's a deep wall back there, but he's going to be leading off. I think the most important thing is you need Trey Sweeney at shortstop. You cannot run a middle infield of Gleyber Torres and Javier Baez.
Whoa. Time out. I think if you listen to this podcast enough, I don't know, Andrew, if you listen to the podcast, but we talked about I think this was back in November after the World Series. Like my Instagram reels, like algorithm, we just MLB edits, and I watched like an hour full of Javier Baez. Like, what's the problem of having Javier Baez? I think Javier Baez is one of those guys that he needs to be stimulated. He needs to be like locked in. Like if he is on a winning team and he is stimulated by whatever's going around, he will be okay.
Yeah. I mean, you asked the question, what's wrong with Javi Baez? If I had those answers, I would not be in a studio apartment in Wrigleyville. I think let's get that out there. But I think the funny thing about this whole thing with Javi Baez is he was in an MVP race with Christian Yelich. I forget the year exactly, but like that was like the high point of his career, winning a World Series, 5-minute walk from where I'm at right now. Pretty unbelievable for the guy. And when you sign a deal of that magnitude and then underperform of that magnitude, he's dug himself in such a hole. Like the sports world is turning on him like crazy. And I guess the point I'm trying to make, it puts him in this spot where if he just has like a decent season, a below average season, plays 90 games and bats 230, 240 and hits some really clutch homers and some electric plays, like that's really all this team really needs from him at this point. Like you paid him the money, he's going to be here. Unfortunately, you're stuck with him, and he's an electric player. I hope that he just has the fire enough in him. And I hope the team around him just embraces him enough to where he doesn't just kill the vibe of this team. Because the whole thing with this team, a lot of people like to talk about, certain dates, certain games, which started the run of last year. But a date that people like to look forward to is when they got rid of Javi Baez, but they designated for injury for the rest of the season. And that's pretty much when they started that run. So we'll see how they use him this year. We'll see how much Trey Sweeney gets reps at shortstop, how much they give it to Zach McKinstry and Javi Baez. AJ Hinch is going to be very flexible with this lineup, and he has no problem burying him at the bottom of the depth or the lineup at 8 or 9 and playing him once every 3-4 games. I think he's proven that.
And I think the biggest thing you touched on is you'll have, I think William would agree, a top 3 manager in the game. AJ Hinch, aside from the, scandal that happened, he's still one of the best in the game. I think we can all agree.
Yeah, it's interesting to go this far. I mean, we've only been going for a few minutes here, but to not talk about the scandal yet, it's when he got brought in, it was like something that I hated as a fan when the whole thing came out. But at the end of the day, like the managerial decisions that he's making with a below average lineup, no doubt, and some pretty good pitching, him and Chris Fetter have done a really nice job with this whole team. And it's something where at the end of the day, I really hate that whole thing with the Astros, but I'm definitely willing to look past it at this point.
I think you can feel really good, even if the lineup, like you said, maybe isn't at average. I mean, last year, if you look at the stats, they're basically 20th in all of the 20th or below in all the major stat categories. Yep. But you have the right guy pulling the strings, and he has a proven track record alongside Alex Cora, another guy that I just trust at the helm of my baseball team. Not that the Red Sox are talking about my baseball team, but you get the point. That I think he's going to get the best out of these guys. I look at a guy like Riley Green. I think you can make an argument he's the best left fielder in the sport, certainly top 3 right now. Mm-hmm. And I think that's a guy you point to. This is a top 5 overall pick. Like you're going to need an all-star level season, maybe even push for him to get MVP votes if you want to, push for the division, push for the DS or CS this year. He has to have a superstar year. Glaber's got to have a good year, bounce back year. Kerry Carpenter, I think he's got to figure out how to hit lefties. He's great against righties. I mean, that Class A home run was electric, probably the best Tigers moment since a World Series run for you guys. He's got to do better against lefties this year. If he does, and I saw some quotes today saying that he feels confident that he's going to be able to hit lefties, which of course everyone's optimistic in spring training. But if he starts hitting lefties, that's another problem in that lineup. Cole Keith year 2. I think there's some things to like with the lineup.
I think there's a big point we're missing out. Jackson Jobe. Have you seen him in spring?
Well,
Yeah.
I was going to transition into the starting rotation now and the arms. Yeah. Go ahead, Luis. You look like you had something to say.
No, I'm just saying, like Jackson Jobe. I'm big into like the advanced metrics, RPM, spin rates, TGS plus stuff, and like his stuff. This, like the swords he's been getting has been great.
Yeah, he's an exciting player, and like I don't know what the Tigers' plan with him is, because with service time, like they can definitely manipulate when he's gonna be coming out. So the Alex Cobb injury is also an acquisition that was made, and an acquisition that happened and an injury that occurred in the offseason here. So I think that puts Jackson Jobe potentially on this roster on opening day. I think that's something that fans definitely want to see, and there's a need for it, I think, at this point. The biggest thing that I always hark back on as a fan is that the first 2 months of the season are so important. And not only, I mean, I hate to go back to 2024 because it's such an anomaly, right? Like you can't bank on such a run like that in such a short period of time. Like if you want to be a consistent team, and this is what the Tigers want to be, they want AJ Hinch here for a long time. They want to build this pitching staff and keep these guys around and build this lineup and keep these guys together. If you want to do that, you're going to have to start winning in April and May. And it's something that these Tigers teams that I loved, seeing in the early 2010s era. That's what they did. They went out in April and May and they dominated and they took control of the Central. You need to do that this year. And it's something that we haven't seen in the past. So with the Jackson Jobe thing, if you don't see him on the opening day roster, it's a little bit of a disappointment. That doesn't mean that they can't have a nice spring and into the summer. But yeah, there's a lot of question marks with the pitching staff outside of Skubal and Flaherty, but those two are some of the best I've seen on this, representing the English D in the last 15 years. So, like, no doubt. So it's not too bad. I really like our bullpen too. I think we got a lot of support from the bullpen with the back end of the starting pitching not being as deep.
I mean, I think Joe will be on the opening day roster. He's in. I mean, according to the DraftKings FanDuel odds, like he's a top 3 rookie of the year candidate, favorite, whatever you want to call it. And if he spends the full season with the team and does end up winning rookie of the year, it's not necessarily a super strong class for the American League this year. He would be able to. The Tigers would get an extra draft pick as a result. So I think there is some incentive there. And I also just think he's a really good pitcher. Like I think he's going to earn himself a roster spot this year.
He is. They've pitched him a lot in spring training, which is encouraging for that hope that he is out there. But honestly, I just don't care about the draft pick at this point. I want to see this guy in the major leagues. I think he's a fantastic spot as a 4th or a 5th starter. You have Casey Mize, who we haven't talked about yet, a former 1-1. I think that he has a lot of upside going into this year outside of, coming off of a Tommy John. He's going to get a lot of innings. I just think you have so much more, a better grasp of your pitching staff if you have Jobe in this rotation. And I think it takes a lot off the bullpen as well.
One of the things I also wanted to point out, I hope Torkelson gets it together.
Yeah, I was going to ask, what's the deal with Torkelson?
Yeah,
it's like Green. That was like Green's, honestly, like him and Green coming up in the organization. You attach those guys' names together, and it's Green's name came up a couple of times earlier, and I hesitated on bringing up Torkelson because that was we're waiting for Green Torque, we're waiting for Green Torque, and the lack of production against right-handed pitching is just incredible. Like you go into an at-bat and you watch this guy against right-handed pitching, and it's just so uncompetitive. The pitcher dominates him from the first pitch he sees to the last. And I hope that he figures it out. There is optimism with him just because of him being a former 1-1. But, man, like, I just don't have a lot of hope for him making the opening day roster if we want to start there, because just his lack of flexibility in the infield. Like he's only going to play first in DH, and we're moving Colt Keith to first full time. He's going to be our and like, do you really want to take up a roster spot for a guy who's just going to, platoon at first base and play DH and strike out against right-handed pitching? I don't know. I'm okay with seeing that in Toledo until he proves otherwise, and then hopefully this team can survive without him for the first couple months of the season. And then if he's performing in Toledo, which we've seen him do when he was coming up through the major league ranks, I mean, Colt Keith, Riley Green, and Torkelson, you saw highlights coming out of Toledo every day about these guys. So if he goes down there, gets his confidence back, and then joins this team whenever an injury pops up at the right time, I think that's the best case scenario for him, because he's definitely not making this opening day roster. There's no way.
And yeah, that's one of the things William talks about a lot, and we talked about it last year. It's that difference between AAA and Major League, the difference in pitching stuff. That, guys in the majors, their stuff is just high 90s, and their stuff is just premium compared to what you see in AAA. So
the gap has never been bigger between AAA and Major League pitching.
No, it really hasn't. And I think velocity can kind of, you look at the velocity down in AAA and you're like, wow, these guys are still throwing hard down there. But I think just the spin on certain off speeds, whenever you're able to see an 86, 87 mile an hour changeup coming your way, and then pair that with, the tunneling of the fastball and then certain off speed pitches, I think guys in the major leagues are just so much more seasoned in that department than the minor leagues, and guys are trying to get comfortable with certain things, and hitters are just, I think, a little bit more comfortable, and they're so eager to get to the major leagues. I think you see a little bit more of an offensive advantage in AAA, and then get guys like Torkelson get to the major leagues, and it's just it can look ugly if you don't have the right approach to the game. And some stories, I'm not going to get into it too much, but some stories about the offseason in Torkelson's training regimen.
Oh, I read about that. I did read about that. Yeah.
Shaking my head.
Very interesting.
Essentially, I'll just touch on it briefly for the info. He's the quote, you go up and look for it. I don't have it pulled up, but he's essentially saying that he doesn't look at film, that he's just like a feel guy. And you're a major league player. Like, I get if you want to, I don't know. It's almost like if you're betting on a PGA Tour player and his comments after a bad round are just like, yeah, I haven't been hitting the range much, but I'm just kind of a feel guy.
Yeah, exactly. That's exactly what.
Okay, go ahead. Put that in AAA.
Yeah,
it's like when you're studying for a test, or you get work. You're like, you do a job or a project, and they're like, oh, this is crappy, and they're like, they give you like an evaluation on like what you can get better. You're like, oh no, I know next time I can do better.
I'm just a feel guy. I'm a feel guy.
I just feel like I've said it once before and I'll say it again. As a former 1-1, I feel like the mentality just has to be a little bit different. I feel like Casey Mize at his veteran status, also as a former first overall pick, is kind of figuring that out a little bit after coming off of a Tommy John injury. But yeah, we'll see with Torkelson, and like I said, we'll see with Torkelson in Toledo.
Yeah, that's interesting on the field thing. I think we've beaten around the bush a little bit, but I think the biggest thing with the Tigers this year is very clearly the pitching staff. I know we talked about it a little bit, but last year they were 4th in ERA amongst starters, 5th amongst relievers, 2nd in WHIP amongst both, 1st in walks per 9 amongst relievers, 3rd amongst starters. Like, pitching staff is freaking elite, and you have the best pitcher in the sport right now. Tarik Skubal 1A, Paul Skeens 1B in my book right now. Tarik Skubal coming off a 2.39 ERA season. I mean, like you said, unanimous Cy Young. Dude's a workhorse. He's the best pitcher in the sport right now. And I think in a division where it's gettable, there's not any team that really stands out. Having a guy like that is just, it's huge. And then you got Jack Flaherty, coming off maybe not the best World Series performance for the Dodgers, but I still think, he's played some of his best baseball in Detroit.
Yeah. his World Series performance helped the Tigers out, because if he performs well in the postseason, I think he's out of the Tigers' price range. And he was not a part of their offseason plan as it's come out. They were not looking into him. And then it came down into the 80s, and they were like, you know what? This will be a great reunion. He enjoyed it. He was, he was talked about it after the trade and how much he liked Detroit. And yeah, it's nice to have him back. I was very pleased with him at the beginning of the season last year. And you hit on just our overall pitching staff. I think that the Tigers have done such an amazing job keeping Chris Fetter around, because there was a couple of seasons ago where he had rumors to go be the head coach at University of Michigan. And that scared the ever-living you-know-what out of me, because I felt like if he left the organization at that point, and like I said, this was before Skubal came Skubal, this before a lot of this hype around the Tigers even started developing. I felt like if you lost him, you were going to lose something that was obviously brewing in Detroit. You saw them have success stories with guys like Shane Green, just moving him at the deadline picking him up, kind of restoring his career a little bit and then flipping him. And that's a guy who had made one All-Star in his entire career, and that's with Detroit. And they've done that with a number of other guys throughout the last couple of years. And I think that whole aura about this Tigers team and about what they can do on the defensive side of the ball has definitely started to pick up some steam. I don't think it really has that leverage and that power throughout the league if Skubal doesn't go out and win a unanimous Cy Young. I think it's still just a quiet, like, oh, the Tigers just have like a really good pitching staff and whatever. But yeah, like I think I've used this phrase before, but hitching your coattails to a guy like Tarik Skubal and just having him carry your whole pitching staff is massive. I think him combined with Chris Fetter and then all these guys just rallying around that specifically. I mean, the guys just rave about Skubal in the clubhouse, and you got a guy like Tyler Holton and Jason Foley at the back end of your bullpen. Those are guys that I feel really confident to close out games. So I know that there are some question marks in the middle of our bullpen a little bit, but yeah, the pitching prowess has definitely developed in Detroit, and it's very exciting, especially with the lack of some of our offensive ability. And some of that I think you mentioned too, Will, is with Comerica Park, and I think that's something that's so unique without baseball, something that I love about the sport.
Yeah, I'm excited to see the bullpen too. Canely, I think, is going to be a really good addition for you guys coming over from the Yankees. He was always one of our better relievers, kind of a middle relief guy. And like you said, the guys they got on the back end there, it's going to be really hard to score runs against the Tigers this year. They might not score 8 runs a game. It might be frustrating watching some of their offensive performances, but I think their pitching staff is going to keep them in a lot of games, honestly. And with that, at least you want to give us the number, the line.
So DraftKings over under not sponsored. Please bet responsibly. 83.5. Last year they went 86 and 76. Me and William have put their ceiling as division winners, and that Riley Green goes to stardom. Worst case scenario as they fall to third as the lineup struggles. Do we all agree with that?
Yeah, no doubt. I read it, and it was no doubt. I mean, our best case scenario is winning this division, and worst case scenario is what we've done and what we've seen in Detroit for too long, and that's a clear cut or 2 teams battling for that number 1 spot, and then you're just 8 or 9 games back of that first game or that first place spot a few months into the season. That's definitely the worst case scenario. I agree with the over under that Vegas has set out. I find it interesting too. I feel like looking at over unders from the time I understood what that meant till now, I felt like that was always so low for every single team that I was rooting for with the Tigers, whether they were really bad or really good. I felt like their over-under was always marked too low. It's really hard to win 90 games in this year's MLB. So, yeah, 83.5, have no problem with that number. And I would probably take the over, but I think at this point, half hour in, people are going to label me a homer. So that's fine.
Nah. No, you're not a homer, because in years past when we've been friends, you have been plenty pessimistic about this team.
Yeah, I show my pessimism at points.
I agree mostly with the assessment we brought out, Luis. I do think there's a world in which they finish fourth if everything goes south. I think Guardians, Tigers, Royals, Twins, you could put them in a bag and shake it up and tell me an order, and I would believe it. White Sox, unfortunately, I don't see a world in which they're not last.
Hey, wait a second. Before you continue with the whole White Sox, did y'all see the quote by Chris Getz today at spring training?
I did not. No, it's here.
He says that he wouldn't be surprised. Like, he said that he thinks that Luis Robert can get some MVP votes.
I mean,
they'd have to have a heck of a season to get there.
Who in the world is protecting him in that lineup? Andrew Benintendi?
Hey, he's out. And did you see the spring training game where they went back to back?
We didn't even talk about that. The Tigers, back to back 3 straight.
I will say, I had an off day today. For those listening, I work these weird hours at O'Hare Airport, so I had an off day today. Was able to catch spring training on ESPN, and they had quite an offensive showing going. Like you said, I think they hit 3 straight and held the Phillies to very little runs. It was a spring training game, but definitely got the juices flowing for this podcast.
Yeah. So my assessment, I think they'll hit the over. I think the biggest thing we want to emphasize this year is that pitching is at a premium and it is a pitcher's league. And I think with Riley Green, they have enough talent to score 1 or 2 runs. And I think the 1-2-3, it's not a 1-2-3 like the Diamondbacks or the Yankees, but it is still a 1-2-3 that will control teams between Skubal, Flaherty, and Olsen. That'll take over the 83.5. And I will also add that, they have a good pen. I'm a big Andrew Chafin guy. I think he has these shirts that says failed starter.
Mm-hmm.
And
he's got a little bit of a red ass in the clubhouse this year. I've heard from the reporters. Like, this guy is a really fun, go happy guy, and he came in on a minor league deal late in camp, and he's pitching for his life out there this year. It'll be interesting to see if he makes the team. I think he has a really decent shot, but he technically is on a minor league deal. I want him to make the team. Big Andrew Chafin fan. Every time they've signed him, which I think is like 3 times now, I've been a fan.
Yeah, no, in regards to Chafin, he was a guy that me and William talked off pod, going like, I've been really tapped into the Yankees offseason because of the whole Soto drama. And their offseason has been very predictable in a sense of what they target and look for. And so when I played around over when William was on vacation, I looked at some metrics, and the guys that fit those metrics were Tim Hill and Andrew Chafin. Fast forward a week when William comes back from vacation, we get the Yankees want Chafin or Hill. And here we
ended up getting Hill, not Chafin, because we need lefty relievers.
But we'll talk about the Yankees later. I mean, I think we're all.
Whoa! I haven't even given my pick yet.
I thought you picked.
I have not, but I'm taking the over. I'm taking the over. Pretty much
all 3 over. Wow.
All 3 over. This is my division champ.
Okay. I just think this division also, at this point, like you said, it's a mixed bag. Like, however you shake it up and whatever comes out. And I think this division will just cannibalize each other. So those win totals will be elevated in the sense that, everybody probably beats the White Sox, but everybody just goes 500 with everybody else or a little bit above.
Yeah, I can see all of that. I mean, there's no way I don't think that the White Sox make it out of the basement. It would have to be really shocking to me. I mean, I was looking at their roster the other day, and it's just, it feels like the Major League movie, honestly. It's crazy.
It's grim.
Yeah, like the one old dude when they're looking at the spring training route, this guy's dead.
Yeah.
Hey, if you haven't, make sure you go listen. Y'all listening to that podcast. I think we took 10 minutes out talking about the promotional schedule. Yep. William and Andrew, y'all should go one night together, get together instead of going to.
We might do a couple. White Sox do a great job with that stuff. That's like the only thing they do well.
And White Sox, Yankees, and when the Tigers are in town, we should go too.
Yeah, bad tailgates in the parking lot too. White Sox are very good at that.
Yeah,
They do. Are the Tigers coming to Wrigley this year, or was that last year?
They are not coming to Wrigley this year, I don't believe. Yeah, they had a 4 spot in Wrigley last year, or a 3 spot and then a 4 spot, and the White Sox to follow that series. That was pretty much right before that run really got going. So I was excited to see the team at that point.
Mhm.
Trey Sweeney, Kerry Carpenter, and Riley Green hit bombs in the games that I went at. Quick note on the whole beginning of the season here. I think we touched on it a little bit, but there's a lot of injury concerns with this Tigers team and how they're going to construct this lineup. Not so much on the pitching side with Cobb, but I think especially with how they're going to deal third base out with the Matt Vierling injury and Parker Meadows hurt in center field. It's going to be really interesting to see how they construct this lineup, and it's going to be a big deal on how the season goes and if they're going to win the division or compete for a wild card.
Yeah. I mean, I think you got, like I said earlier, I think you got the right guy pulling the strings. And if you need him, Torkelson, he's there. He's waiting for some at-bats.
He's waiting.
Before we get out, obviously you went to Michigan State, grew up in Detroit, so kind of all things Michigan sports. Michigan State and the Pistons, pretty good teams this year. How you feeling heading into getting pretty close to the postseason here?
Yeah, I mean, it is March. Feels like March. Smells like March. It's a great time. Michigan State's got a team this year. I feel really good about the whole vibe of this team going into the tournament. They got a huge game coming up against Michigan. I feel like, and they got a game on the road against Iowa before that. If they can close out the season with 2 wins and a decent run of the Big Ten tournament, you don't have to win that championship game. I don't think that matters as much as you think it does. In fact, losing it sometimes can help you a little bit more in that tournament. But they're an exciting team. Jace Richardson is a lefty guard that is so crafty, and their bigs are very exciting to play. They just play such good defense, and they suffocate you at the end of the games. They just don't let you score. They just simply don't let you score at the end of the games, and it's pretty unbelievable to watch. And when they get paired up with one of these teams who want to score a lot, like Alabama or an Auburn, these SEC teams have these super high scoring games compared to these Big Ten games. And when they get matched up with a team like that, like which style wins, it's going to be very interesting. And I'm Tom Izzo. If I had to rank all the coaches of all the teams that I've watched, he's number 1, no doubt. The longevity and just the passion for the school I went to, pretty unbelievable. And then you obviously hit on the Pistons for a sec there. Very fun to not be the laughingstock of the league anymore, in a similar sense with the Tigers from a few years ago. But
motorcade,
the fake league. Motorcade's amazing. Motorcade's amazing. There's just not a lot of steam going into the playoffs with this team. If you want to believe that, you can, but it just won't match up well with some of the elite teams in the NBA. But it's super exciting. I went to back-to-back games in Chicago where they were up 74-29 at halftime. Freaking dominating a worthless piece of crap team, which it seems like half the league is at this point, which is kind of what I was alluding to earlier. Yeah, they're an exciting team, and they're athletic. All-Starcade is honestly taking a similar rise as O'Reilly Green is, like just to tie it back into the Tigers here. A Detroit star who had a lot of hope coming in and is really invigorating this town. Lions are doing a good job of that as well. Tigers are looking to make a really fun summer because it wasn't a super fun summer last year. They got it going at the end when everybody started caring about football. But yeah, let's get it going, boys. It's the boys of the summer.
I want them to have a good full season. Detroit sports are back, honestly. Detroit sports are back.
Hey, time to blast some Kid Rock too. Put some Kid Rock, Summer. What's the one? Summer. What's that song called?
Boys of Summer or something. I don't know.
All summer long. You're thinking.
Yeah, that one. Yeah.
Yeah. The best thing about Detroit sports coming back is all the Detroit stereotypes. You got Eminem in the crowd. You got Kid Rock. I need all of it. Except the Lions. I can't stand them.
He's a Packers fan.
Packer fan.
Oh.
I mentioned my dad growing up in Wisconsin. I feel like people can understand how that all played out.
Yeah,
that's interesting.
Thanks for having me on, boys. This was a very fun time talking about my team. I hope I got the propaganda out there for the world to hear.
No, it was good. It was great having you on. Extensive preview. I feel like we hit on everything, and honestly, got me looking forward to the Tigers this season.
Yes, we are.
All right, Luis, you got anything else before we get out?
So, I mean, next stop tomorrow, wrapping up the Tigers, we're going up to Andrew's birthplace, to the Brewers, as he said. So we'll get you some Brewers content tomorrow, and be ready for that. I hope you had a good Detroit style pizza when you were listening to this, and we'll see you tomorrow when we go to Milwaukee, eat some cheese curds and some Miller Lights.
Yep.
So
American over Lafayette, by the way.
Oh, and you heard it here first.
You heard it here first. All right, Andrew. Thanks for coming on. First time on the pod. We'll definitely have you back on throughout the season to talk some Tigers, because this was a lot of fun.
Appreciate you, Will. You too, Louise.
Appreciate
Alrighty.
you.
Thanks, guys. Thanks, everyone, for listening. Like Louise said, we'll be back tomorrow with the Milwaukee Brewers, just continuing this run of Central teams.
Central block.
Central block. Until then, we'll catch you guys next time. Peace out.
Peace.